Welcome to Talking Buffalo, featuring conversations with guests from around the world of sports, media, pop culture, and all things Buffalo, with your host, Patrick Moran.
All right, what is going on, everybody? How you doing? Welcome. A new week, a new episode 851, Talking Buffalo, your weekday daily driver for Buffalo sports talk and more. Today's episode is presented by Golf Dojo. Your space, your time, your game. Bring your game to Golf Dojo, Western New York's best indoor golf experience. Visit mygolfdojo.com. My name is Patrick Moran. Big thank you to everybody out there, as always, for watching, for listening, following, subscribing. I do appreciate y'all very much. 8 practices, Buffalo Bills training camp now in the books. A new week. I will actually be in Rochester for practice myself on Monday. I am joined right now by a special guest, actually the first time ever having him on Talking Buffalo, sports reporter for the Batavia Daily News. Good buddy of mine, Ajay Cybulski, a real riser here in the Buffalo sports media community, man. How you doing, AJ?
Good, Pat. Thank you for having me on. Obviously a fan of the show. I've tuned in multiple times. Love what you do. Episode 851. That's pretty crazy. That's a pretty high number. So I know you've been doing this a while, and I know you've kind of crafted it, and you know what you're doing. So I'm looking forward to today's show.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to talking to you as well. And I've been interested in you now, man, for a while. I've followed you kind of from afar. And we're going to talk plenty of Bills camp. You've been to a couple practices yourself, been on the field. I want to get some of your thoughts on what you've seen so far with Bills camp. A couple of things specifically that I want to make sure we get to as well. But yeah, to my point there, your stock has been rising pretty quickly there, AJ. I remember you not all that long ago, being an intern with Matt Perino over at Shout. And I've started remembering when you started a podcast at the time with the Buffalo Rumblings on their network. And now, like I said, you're working with Batavia, man. My man, Alex Brasky, kind of learning what like sports media life is like for real now on the fly. How have things been for you?
Yeah, it's definitely been, the last probably year. So yeah, I started with Matt over there interning at Syracuse.com. Obviously a major help, kind of influenced me. I met Matt back during a training camp practice back in like 2017. And that's kind of when I was a late bloomer in terms of realizing that like maybe I could actually do this kind of stuff. So it didn't really click. I went to school for meteorology. That lasted a semester. I loved like the weather. I loved lake effect snow. So I live right in the Sun Belt, or snow belt, not Sun Belt, snow belt of like, the South towns that got blasted. So when it's lake effect snow season, I'm constantly watching the news, checking National Weather Service and doing that. But obviously it wasn't for me. The physics and science and math part was just a little too difficult. So then I thought, well, sports has been a big part of my life. I interned over at Cover One, which was a huge help for me.
Sure.
I got to cover the Combine, the Senior Bowl, and that's really when I got like in-person experience. And that's kind of when I think people started to, know me a little bit because I was given those opportunities with Cover One. Forever grateful for that. And then, moving over to Rumblings, got my own show there, and then was able to cover training camp practice last year. And then, this past January, Alex Brasky reached out to me, and we've been going at it here for more than a couple months now, a few months, and it's been a learning experience. A lot still I need to learn, but overall, it's been a fun ride along the way, and I've enjoyed every second of it.
Yeah, for sure. It's a learning experience. Like you said, you're still learning, but you're kind of learning on the fly. And now, relatively early into a career, you're covering the Bills. And I mean, like you're covering the Bills now at this point. And Alex is a good grinder, man. He really is. I could tell following, a lot of stuff on social media. Because like last year, I got to go to almost all the practices. This year, I haven't really had an opportunity. I've only been able to get to one so far. Like I said, on Monday, I'll be there for sure. And then hopefully Tuesday, and we'll see about maybe Thursday as well to wrap up. But my point is I'm spending more time this year following camp through social media, through primarily Twitter X, of course, I'm talking about here. And Alex is doing really good, man. He is grinding. He's putting out videos. I've been reading both of your guys' work, the podcast right here, right now, which, by the way, talk about that for a few minutes as well before we dive into some Bills stuff. It's a newer podcast that yourself and Alex have launched, covering, of course, the Bills. But just talk about, like I said, the grind, the podcast, talk about just the grind of getting into this now, what you're doing, working with Alex, and being on a field, like I said, covering an NFL training camp credentialed is a lot different than I do, for an example. You know what I mean? I'm going to talk about the team, but I'm not covering the team, so to speak. You kind of are now, so got to speak on that.
Yeah, so it's definitely been an adjustment, going into the actual sports media world, working in the non-traditional sphere for a little bit. Loved every second of it. I think non-traditional
Sure.
is a very important asset to media nowadays, and I think it's going to continue to grow and grow, and who knows what the future holds with that. But yeah, the Right Here, Right Now pod with Alex Brasky over at the Batavia Daily News, just a weekly podcast we do daily throughout the past couple of weeks because of the fact that training camp's obviously going on, so we want to get our takeaways out there in a timely, accurate manner. So we try and go live a couple hours after practice. You can find us, on all audio platforms. We go live on YouTube as well, over on the Batavia Daily News YouTube channel. But yeah, it's been like getting to cover my first Bills practice at training camp was pretty surreal. I think it's everything that I expected. In terms of like what I was supposed to do and like feeling comfortable and knowing I was given updates last year, not in the stands, but it is surreal
Right.
when you get to actually live it out. It's something that when Bobby Babbitt said, who knows how the heck I'm going to do when I actually become the defensive coordinator or I actually call the plays. I kind of felt that same way. Like, who knows how actually I'm going to be at this. I've only been on Twitter tweeting, trying to build my following, and that's also, of course, a big reason why I think I've gotten to where I've gotten is because of I don't I don't have a journalism degree. So that's like the big thing.
Right.
I love writings, but I'm not, again, I was a late bloomer, so I only have a communications minor. I went to school for sports management. I went to Brockport. So I'm just a late bloomer, but it's all worked out. Yeah, the pod's great. Covering the Bills was just, it's a great experience. I cover high school sports as well, so I'm doing some commentating, photography. So really doing everything that really a media person does, and hopefully that can lead to new things. You just got to put yourself out there. That's what I would tell people. If anyone listening to this is interested, because people reach out all the time, I would just say, take risks, put yourself out there, do things, sacrifice, and put yourself in uncomfortable situations. And I
Sure.
think that will lead the way to maybe it working out one day.
Put yourself out there, work hard, obviously, and don't be afraid to talk to people in the media because for the most part, they're helpful and they're accommodating. How nerve-wracking was it to get that credential and actually be on a field for an NFL training camp practice? Again, it's a big difference as opposed to, like you said, watching the team, covering the team in a different way, like you're from the stands, you're tweeting out your thoughts and stuff like that. This kind of a different animal. How nerve-wracking was that? I remember AJ, and I'm significantly older than you, but I'm going back a long time. But I remember throughout the process of my life and career, I've covered the Bills and I've covered the Sabres at various points professionally, so to speak, where I had a credential and stuff. I went to the games. And I'll never forget when I first got a season credential for the Sabres, going back a long time. Not going to lie to you, dude. I was kind of shitting my pants at first, sitting in the press box, being alongside a lot of the sports media people that I respected very much. And of course, going into the locker room and having opportunities to talk to Lindy Ruff and, a lot of the players on the team that you grow up, you watch them on TV and now you're kind of covering them. So it's an adjustment. I'm sure you've gotten used to you are getting used to it, but a little bit nerve wracking to start at least to do something like that for you.
Yeah, definitely. I think like going to the first press conference I've ever covered, because I went to like the combine again, like with Cover One, they really gave me that opportunity. So I was able to have some experience in terms of interviews. Like I actually interviewed Dorian Williams, Cole Bishop, Dalton. So I actually talked to, so which was cool to see them kind of talk to them at the combine and then see them kind of, now matured Kincaid going into a big
Sure.
second year. So yeah, I think the first practice, just sitting there in the chairs next to people or not knowing what fish I should sit, because again, so many people I respect next to me, Sal Capaccio, Mark Gunn of the Buffalo News, a lot of people that have done it for a long time that I really respect. So it's like, do I say the right question? Or you kind of overthink it, especially me only being 23 years old. A lot of these people have been doing it for a while. And, I also like have a different perspective because I didn't grow up during the 4 Super Bowl losses that many people did. So that's also, I think, something unique about what I could bring is I'd never, thankfully I was not around during the 4 Super Bowl losses, but I think that part is pretty cool because I don't have that kind of perspective and other people do. So I think it maybe gives me a little bit different perspective on the team and overall just the conversations going into it each season. But yeah, definitely nerve wracking. When Josh was at the podium, I'm not gonna lie, like I asked him a question, but yeah, the heart was pounding a little bit because you're like, okay, like I don't want to sound stupid. I want this guy to give a good answer. And obviously it all went well. you have all these anxious thoughts, but it goes away after you get it done. But yeah,
Sure.
definitely nerve wracking. But yeah, it was definitely an experience for sure.
Well, credit to you for asking a question, because there are people in the media, Bill's side, Sabres side, that will go to scrums, and they're there every day and they really never ask any questions. So for you to have the fortitude, so to say, to dive in and ask a question, good on you, man. And my guy Matt Marino, he talks you up. I mean, that's not surprising. I know Matt's your guy too, but Marino has talked you up very well. And I look forward to seeing you progress in your career and how you are covering the team professionally this year, along with Alex at Batavia. All right, so let's kind of dive into some actual camp stuff. I know as people want to hear about this. Couple things specifically, it really stood out to me through the first 8 days. And again, I only got to see one thing visually with my own eyes. So a lot of this I've depended on people like yourself and Alex and Matt and Sal, everybody, just a collection of videos and clips and thoughts and podcasts and stuff like that I've been locked in on. I'm a part of a group of some content creators who, one of us are always at practice and we're sharing thoughts and stuff like that. But anyway, a resounding dominant factor of camp has been, I don't think it's a big surprise, but the rookie, Keon Coleman, he's making highlight plays. It seems like one or two plays almost every single practice, like the type of plays that few other receivers around the league even can make. And I'm talking about veteran receivers as well. I kind of feel like from what I see with him, it's going to come down to how consistent can he be? How consistent can he deliver? How consistent can he make the big play? Just how consistent will he play? Because one thing I think, AJ, that we're seeing right away in camp that maybe we didn't feel about him, I didn't feel about him before camp, is he really is starting to look like a very high ceiling type of player. Like if things go right with this guy, if things break right with this guy, if he does have that consistency, he legit could be a T. Higgins type. He could be a really good, potentially dominant receiver. What have you seen firsthand with yourself from Keon Coleman so far through camp?
Yeah, 100% agree with you, Pat, on the high ceiling part. Now, I think there's a lot he has to work on at this point to get to that high ceiling. I think you would agree with that. But I mean, what I've seen from him is just first of all, pure athleticism. The guy can win at every level, especially in the red zone. I think he really has success. I feel like him and Josh, their continuity has been working. Just his ability to rise above the defender, grab the ball, haul it in, and it's something that he has the softer hands for a bigger guy. Like his hands are very consistent, have been very reliable. You're not seeing like these clips that the Bills keep sharing of Keon Coleman mossing a Christian Bedford or a Roswell Douglas or a Kaiir Elam is, he's not dropping ones that aren't being taken. Every time it's intended for him in the end zone, he's coming away with it and he's winning those 50-50 balls, which is going to the Gabe Davis conversation. And you talk about consistency. Gabe Davis was a guy that could never be consistent. So you feel like with Coleman, I'm not saying they're the same player. I think Coleman's way better athletically. And I think Coleman has a little more nuance in terms of like route running and understanding where to go on the field. But if you look at it in the grand scope of things, bigger picture, I think if you can get a Keon Coleman, because Gabe struggled. He was always fine in the boundary and he was always fine deep. But the thing with Gabe is he had trouble being an impact underneath and getting open underneath and separating. I think with Coleman, to become a complete player and to be that T. Higgins type, that ceiling that you think he could be, or a Mookie Hawkinson, a Des Bryant type player, I think you have to have that ability where he can, beat you deep and use his physicality. And he's got to bring that underneath as well at every level of the defense and be able to separate and win. Because if that doesn't happen, how are you going to be able to threaten the defense? So I really like what I've seen from Keon so far. I think this year's perfect in terms of like a curve for him because he's got less pressure on him with Kincaid, Shakir, Samuel, James Cook being so featured. I think this can really assimilate Coleman. And I'm not saying I don't expect him to be good this year, have major impact plays, but I think as the years go on with Coleman and he can remain in a Bills uniform and, continue to progress, I think his, the stock will keep increasing as time goes on here.
We live in a society of takes nowadays. Everybody's got their takes and they're the bold takes, and the bolder, the better, but even though they don't work out that way. Well, I'll tell you, before camp, my take was my big old Bills bold season prediction take was MVS was going to have more receiving yards than Keon Coleman as a rookie. And we're 8 practices in, and I'm ready to take that take and flush it down the toilet, I think, at this point. Because I said that take for a couple of reasons. Number one, I like MVS's track record coming to Buffalo and coming into training camp. And it didn't mean that I was down on Keon Coleman. It meant that I thought that he's going to start very slowly and kind of work his way into the lineup a little more and more throughout the season and maybe set himself up in future seasons to be a really good player. So it was never about being down on Keon Coleman. It was more just thinking he was going to be a slow starter in this offense while MVS would take the reins early on. We'll talk about MVS in a minute. That has not happened from his end, at least to this point anyway. But Keon Coleman, I think, even though he's like a guy that everybody has their eyes on because of lots of reasons, no Gabe Davis, no Stephon Diggs. So, he's the first overall pick for the Bills this year. So there's already reasons to have eyeballs on him. But I think most people would be surprised by how involved and how successfully involved and how comfortable he looks in a Bills uniform at practice so far. And that's not to mention the outside factors too. He just looks comfortable talking to you guys, on a daily basis. It seems like he was born to play football and just born to be a wide receiver in the NFL.
Yeah, Keon is, I got the chance to listen to him last Friday, not last Friday, the Friday before that when I was at camp. He spoke to the media, and he's just a ball of energy, a ball of fun. Josh Allen said he's really weird, but in a good way. So I kind of said that as well about Keon. So I think just the energy he brings, and I don't think he's been featured too much, I think, in standard 11 on 11. Like, I don't see him. I think that's more like where Shakir, Kincaid, Samuel are really, excelling. I think what you're seeing with Coleman is that 11 on 11 red zone work. And you saw Eric Turner from Cover One pointed out today kind of the communication they had there, where Allen kind of pointed to the inside and Coleman pivoted instantly and Allen put it right on the money. So I think, again, you have we'll probably get to this, but I think you have a perfect package of playmakers at the wide receiver position. They may not be better, and they're nowhere near as close to better on paper right now from what the Bills had a year ago, but I think you have a good combination of guys that if they can get it together and they can put it together with Joe Brady, who has a good track record of, getting the most out of the playmakers on an offense, I think you could have some, success. And although it's probably more risky because Josh isn't going to drop back on the fifth step of his drop if it's a 5-step drop and look to his right, and Diggs isn't going to be open on a dig route 20 yards down the field. But I think when you have a combination of guys that can maybe win individually and you're not having to worry about a guy getting double teamed all the time, and what do you do if he's double teamed? I think that might help this offense in a weird way.
I had Joe Marino of Locked On Bills on the show last week. We did a live show at Sunny Reds in sunny Lackawanna. Anyway, we were talking and I asked him, because he was in Buffalo in town all week for camp this past week. Anyway, I asked him, I said, what's your biggest surprise? What's your big takeaway? And I was half expecting, a conversation to focus around Keon Coleman, because again, to me, he's been a delightful surprise for the most part. I mean, so far at camp with the Bills. But he said, don't overthink this, Pat. It's Josh Allen. Josh Allen, Joe says, far and away looks like he's having the best camp of his career. And he was almost taken back by how quickly it seems that he has developed chemistry with some of these guys. Keon Coleman, of course, being one of them. But Matt Collins, he spoke a lot about Matt Collins and Curtis Samuel. And we've seen, we got a good glimpse last year in the back end of the season of what Khalil Shakir could be, a little more explosive. It seems a second-year Dalton Kincaid right now and stuff like that. But my point is, Josh Allen, according to Joe, is just having the best camp of his career. He's looked sensational almost every day at camp, making plays, throwing the football, with accuracy and precision on top of just seeing the arm strength that we always have known from Josh. If you kind of feel the same way, seeing from what you've seen that Josh has really been a standout at camp. I know that could be the low-hanging fruit because he's the superstar of this team, but a lot of weapons, an offensive coordinator, his first full season, and Josh certainly looks the part right now.
Yeah, I've said on multiple podcasts right here, right now, on my own, and then other ones I've been on over the past couple of weeks, that I think Josh Allen's impressed me the most with just his ball placement and his ability to, because again, you go throughout his career, you go back to Wyoming, Tanner Gentry was his go-to guy. He was a pure separator. Gets to the NFL, Robert Foster, although, again, he's out of the league at this point, but when he had success with Josh Allen, it was because he could separate. Then you go to 2019, John Brown, Cole Beasley, two separators. So throughout his career, it's felt like, oh, Josh Allen loves the separators. That's the receivers he's comfortable with. The Bills go out, when they have Xavier Legette, who I think is a better separator in terms of collegiately at the collegiate level compared to Keon Coleman, and then Xavier Worthy, and the Bills go, no, we're going to go with the big bodied, sure-handed physical freak in Keon Coleman. So I think you're seeing just Josh during this training camp enjoy that. I think he's truly enjoying having a Matt Collins and a Keon Coleman to throw these, these balls high in the air to the corner of the pylon and then just go up and get it and bring it down. And he has confidence in that to happen. And then on the flip side, he can go over the middle to Khalil Shakir, who's shifty as heck, and he can get open in the tiniest amount of space and haul it in. So same with Curtis Samuel. But yeah, I think Josh overall, I think the turnovers have been down despite the blue and red scrimmage where he threw a couple in 7-on-7 and then one during 11-on-11. And then on Friday, the Friday I was at practice, like day 3 or day 4 of camp, he also had 3 interceptions on 4 plays.
Yeah.
But again, that was just kind of a, that was kind of a lull. I guess that was the bad Josh Allen per se. But I think the amount of turnovers that we're not talking about is a good thing because I don't think he's turning the ball over that much. So again, I think at times you've seen reported over the past few years. I don't know if you've felt this way, Pat, but maybe Allen gets a little interception happy during camp. And again, that's not a big concern for me, but I think he's a guy, again, that the turnover problems are still prevalent and we can't totally ignore those going into the season, especially I think he has more pressure on him. But overall, good offseason. You can tell these guys are putting the work. I think collectively they've all looked good. The offenses look solid. And I think I could agree with Joe, and I know many others have said it, that Josh is definitely going into year 7 off to the best start of his career at St. John Fisher.
Yeah, he looks and he sounds confident, and he looks and he sounds comfortable during press conferences and interviews and stuff as well. And you can tell it feels genuine too. Like I feel like what he's saying, he believes what he's saying, and it's not just that typical QB speak, to the media. Anyway, I'll take a real quick break, come back. A couple other players I wanted to talk to you about, namely Kaiir Elam. It's weird almost how much we talk about a guy who's probably almost certainly won't be a starter this year, but still may be an important factor for the Bills. So quick break, come back and talk about that on the other side. All right, I am back here with Ajay Cybulski from the Batavia Daily News. We're talking Buffalo Bills training camp right now. Yeah, I said it before the break, man. Kaiir Elam is a major story from what I see at camp this year. A clean slate for him. And I think that's important. And I thought those were kind of like BS terminology, because we heard a lot going into camp. I'm like, whatever at this point. You know what I mean? The guy's the first round pick, not working out. You want to throw that bus label at him so bad. Not you, I'm saying just generally people wanting to do that. But I'll tell you what, I've taken a different approach because I'm settled that Rasul Douglas and Christian Benford are starting corners for the Bills. And this team has had the luxury over the last handful of years of guys like Dane Jackson, Levi Wallace, not necessarily weren't always full-time starters, but some or guys with plenty of experience and guys that you could depend on and rely on and trust to come in there and play, especially Dane Jackson. Clean slate, like I said, not a starter, but he still has potential for impact. Talk about what you've seen from him, because he is such a, I talked about Keon Coleman being a high ceiling player. I think Kaiir Elam's a high ceiling player. I think Kaiir Elam's also a very low floor player too. Like when things aren't going right, he makes a lot of mental mistakes. He gets really, grabby and holding with receivers, stuff like that. But what have you seen from Kaiir Elam so far?
Yeah, so it's been, for me, not all over the place, because I think from what I've seen from him, he's been really well, or played really well, performed really well during camp. I think there's been some moments where, again, the grabbing and the holding is definitely an issue, and I think that's just his play style. But again, if you're doing it to an extent where it's causing, the flag to drop all the time and you're hurting your team, then that obviously becomes a very big problem, especially for a guy that's considered depth at this point, and they need just to be a consistent guy. So we'll see where that goes in terms of once the regular season comes around, because I still have my questions. If he is put into the situation where he has to, go play a couple games because Benford or Douglas are out, or just because maybe one of them are struggling, maybe Elam could really work his way, maybe I don't think he's going to start, but really push those starters throughout the preseason and the rest of training camp here, because if he keeps performing like he is, I think he can. So we'll see what he can do come regular season. But from what I saw, Pat, it's just been, it feels like a clean slate, new number to the number 5. He was asked about it by Buffalo Plus, and he talked about, this is my natural number. I feel different in it. John Butler, going away to the college ranks at Nebraska, leaving there. I think that relationship was a little, fractured in a sense. And I think Jamil Adai taking over has given him, another, kind of Band-Aid off the body where he doesn't have to worry about, maybe a fractured relationship with the defensive backs coach. So I think those two things are important. Then talking about the play on the field, I just think you're seeing his instincts shine through. He's a physical corner. He's lengthy. He has all the tools in the shed to be a complete corner in this league. It's just about the consistency. And we'll see what happens. I know in the blue and red scrimmage, they were running a cover 2 high shell. Allen, there was a deep corner route. Allen tried to fit it in because Elam was supposed to play the flat, but Elam broke off the flat route or the flat area of the zone he was defending and made a play on the ball, intercepted Josh Allen during 7-on-7. I know on Thursday when I went in back-to-back reps in 7-on-7, he had a great pass breakup on Matt Collins in the end zone, punching it right out of his hands. And then the following play, he had a near pick 6 in the flat intended for, I forget what running back it was, but Allen looked to his right because everything was covered, and Elam, was this close probably to coming away with an interception. So I think you're seeing the splash plays from Elam continue to kind of mount here as we go on. And I think you're looking at a guy who has a lot to prove, a little bit of an underdog story, losing, consecutive back-to-back years to a 6th-round pick from Villanova, coming out as a first rounder from, first rounder from Florida. I think definitely maybe ruins your confidence a little bit, but I think he's taking every, the correct steps that, there was talks of him being traded at the trade deadline last year, Brandon Beane shut those down. So they clearly had belief. I think Beane and McDermott still believe in this kid, and hopefully he can be what they need him to be, which is a consistent third cornerback in this defense.
Not all interceptions are created equal. And if you don't watch them, a lot of times it could be a corner or safety getting beat and it's just a bad throw. You know what I mean? Or just a throwaway gift interception, stuff like that. Remember that I've seen and heard. He has just made some really good plays on the football. Yeah, the goal is to be the third corner, I think, on this team. And I like your point, too, going back to Brandon Beane. I think he showed some confidence in him. He's shown confidence in him by A, not trading him last year, B, not trading him this offseason, and C, not having that veteran corner in there right now to compete with for his job. Like, for an example, if they re-sign Dane Jackson, I think Kaiir Elam's spot on this roster was in huge jeopardy. If they had a Dane Jackson type in camp right now, he might be in for the fight of his life to even make this roster. The fact that he's that third corner, I think I know he's got an ongoing competition with Ingram. We should never just completely dismiss Ingram either, but he's got a leg up on that, I feel like. And the fact that you look at who he's competing against tells me that Brandon Beane does have some confidence in him, because I thought it was a mistake going into camp that they didn't have another veteran corner in case something happens to Rasul or to Benford. But if Elam's going to look like he's looked so far in camp, that's not such a bad thing. Conversely, real quick here, Alex, too, safety feels like that's the position of concern so far in camp, the big story. Maybe a little bit of a concern, or at least a question mark going into camp, even when they were healthy, because you don't have Poyer anymore. You don't have Hyde. You got Rapp, and then you got Bishop, Hamlin, and who am I forgetting? Mike Edwards. Jeez, I had a brain fart there for a second. Anyway, Edwards and Edwards gets hurt right away. Now Cole Bishop's hurt, and they're both out for at least a couple weeks. That position is taking a hit. What's your level of concern with the safeties right now with the Bills?
If you ask me to scale it, because I'm not. So the tough part is this, because I sit here and look. Okay, Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer were here for 7 years. They were in Buffalo together, playing almost every snap together. I know they missed some time towards the tail end of that duo. That duo kind of that they had on the field. But I think I'm probably at a 5 out of 10. 5 out of 10 right now, because I do have concerns about what they have in the safety room. DeMar Hamlin played 17 snaps last year on the defense, right? And I get it. Hyde and Poyer were obviously going to be the front runners in that category, but you're looking at a guy that his life ended. Then he kind of resurges, kind of gets his feet underneath him last year, and then balls out during voluntary off-season work at the Bills facilities, and now he's the day one starter opposite Rapp at training camp in terms of he got the first day of the rotation between him, Bishop, and Edwards. So that, first of all, I thought maybe in March he'd be a cut candidate because they brought in Edwards. They, drafted Bishop. They got D. Delaney, who I still think, again, I think he got some second team work today during day 8 of Bills camp. So I don't I don't know if I'm confident. Like, I think Rapp's going to be okay because I think Rapp has the experience. I think he has that Super Bowl pedigree. I think he's had a good camp. He talks about how kind of Hyde and Poyer kind of put him in position to have success in this defense. I think he's comfortable. He started every practice so far at that one safety spot. But with the second safety spot, Pat, I mean, I don't know right now what they're going to do because Edwards, again, like I think I'm not saying Bills fans get too excited about Mike Edwards, but he is a guy that didn't really play. He's played throughout his career, but not many starts throughout his career. And I think he's been a very inconsistent player. Now he was part of a Chiefs defense last year that was really well, played really well, one of the best in the league. But is Mike Edwards a guy that was going to start day one? Or was it going to be a DeMar Hamlin? Or did they have plans for Cole Bishop if he continued to trend? Because I felt like Bishop, before he got hurt, it felt like maybe not taking the job, but I think he was stacking a couple of good days in a row together. So I would say a 5 right now. I want to see who comes out of that safety room opposite Rapp and gets that start. We'll see what they can do, but I've seen some good things from Hamlin. I don't think he's the long-term answer, but I've seen some good things. I think I've seen some good things from Bishop when I was there last week or a couple weeks ago, just to see what he can do. I think he's a guy that he flew through the line of scrimmage untouched, had what would have been a sack on Josh Allen, but was unable to come away with it because they can't touch a quarterback. And then I think Mike Edwards, I haven't seen too much of. He's just struggled to even get on the field. So we'll see what happens, Pat. But I think on paper right now, I mean, this is a bottom 5-10 safety room in the NFL.
Yeah, for sure. At least on paper right now. I'm looking forward to getting both the guys who are hurt back, but particularly I want to see what Edwards can do. I mean, he did well with Kansas City. I spoke to some people who cover the Chiefs who were very high on him and think that, with opportunity, he could be a really good player, but you got to be on the field to be a really good player in this league. I had plans on talking to you a little bit about Matt Milano and Von Miller, but they've been getting plenty of time off, and that's by design. And I'm sure that's a good thing. Von Miller, by all accounts, and I saw it with my own eyes, he really popped to me when I was at camp practice. He looks fast. Like that bend seems to be back. Does not look like he did last year, which is a very good thing for the Bills. Matt Milano, a little more kind of, I would say, trudging along a little bit. You know what I mean? He's kind of amping up a little bit at a time. You see little glimpses of what Matt Milano is, but would you agree that he's not there yet?
Yeah, it's tough again with because I've only seen him one day in pads, and I think Dorian Williams was getting the majority of the reps with the first team that day during 11-on-11. So he did the 2 practices I went to, he blew up a screen twice, one each day. So he did show that like instincts, the lateral quickness to recognize what the offense was doing and get to the defender in the backfield. Dawson Knox would have got Mike Whited, if you know the reference there. He would have got absolutely destroyed, but obviously they can't tackle. So yeah, I think Milano, he's definitely not where he's going to be or where he could be, but for the fact that he was out there in full on day one of camp, I mean, that means the staff's comfortable with where he's at and how they're going to really bring him along. He'll be ready for week 1.
Yeah, for sure. He's a veteran. He's a 30-year-old veteran. It's about load management right now and letting him slowly ramp up. I'm sure they got a nice schedule that they got worked out with him to really achieve that. A couple before we get out of here, got about 10 more minutes. A couple under the radar, like potentially developing stories, I think, with Bills camp that not a lot of people are talking about. One of them is that actually the tight end position. Zach Davidson's having, by all accounts, a really nice camp. When I was there, I didn't pay any attention to him. I think I will be, though, when I'm there tomorrow, whatever, when you're listening to this show. But it looks like he's ready to, he's legitimately challenging Quinton Morris. Not going to be easy because Quinton Morris is a good core special teams player. But do you see it? Like Zach Davidson's having a really productive camp, and he's stepped up. He tore his ACL last year, right? He was on IR, missed the whole season. He's back now, and he's impressing a lot of people out there. So it seems anyway.
Yeah, so that's the question I actually asked Josh about, was Zach Davidson. So when I got the opportunity, because Davidson had 2 touchdowns right in front of me at red zone work, and I just kind of asked Josh the energy that he's provided, and he said he's always the sweatiest player on the field. He's really put himself doing the little things the right way. So I think it is a development path that Quinton Morris felt like, the last couple of years there's been some competition. OJ Howard was signed to maybe put a wrinkle in Quinton Morris's chances of being on this roster. And I feel like every year those chances become greater and greater. So I'd say right now, I mean, it's a pretty good battle. The thing is, though, is when Davidson, balls out or scores, Quinton Morris is right there answering with a reception. So it's been a really good back and forth battle and probably the most competitive of camp right now. And that's a good thing because we're talking about the tight end 3 here. They have probably a top 5 tight end duo already in Dawson Knox and Dalton Kincaid. So that battle for that third tight end, I think Davidson has really shown that athleticism. He's just built. He looks like your typical, stereotypical tight end that you'd want in an offense. So I think if he continues to bring that energy, he does the gritty. He's a very high energy guy. I think he has a chance to make this team.
For many players, the preseason doesn't mean anything, and for the most part, we're watching. We're like, just don't get hurt. That's what we care about. You're covering the team. You're a fan of the team. Don't get hurt. That's ultimately what matters. But for some players in some positions, the preseason means a lot. You kind of get the sense that tight end position, Davidson, Morris, this preseason is going to be starting this Saturday, actually coming up. Extremely meaningful, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I really do, Pat. I think it's tomorrow. I want a Twitter DM tomorrow, and I want you to assess who had the better day, Davidson or Morris, because I think it truly has been. When I've been there, it's truly been a battle, and I think both players. Morris is, like you said, a core special teamer that's been in this system now for a few years. Davidson really trying to work his way and maybe just be the better player than Quentin Morris up to this point. So we'll see what happens.
Another kind of low key thing that I've been kind of waiting on is who's going to be that sixth offensive lineman, and you're like, what? Well, it's actually matter because the Bills have run that jumbo package plenty over the last couple of years. Bobby Hart was that guy 2 years ago, kind of mixed bag. David Edwards was that guy last year, and David Edwards was solid. He had the best PFF run blocking grade of anybody on the team. I mean, he played that role very well. I saw today being Sunday, by the way, for people who are watching and listening to this on Monday. It seems like Alec Anderson is the leading candidate to do that role. Like he was on the field with them for that sixth offensive line. You kind of get a sense that right now an offensive line, which we won't get into today because we could probably spend an hour talking about potential concerns with proven depth behind the starters, other than maybe Leo Collins if he could ever stay on the field. But like Alec Anderson seems to me like he's going to be that backup interior guy. Like he's last year's David Edwards, maybe even Ryan Bates kind of player for the Buffalo Bills. You get that sense with him?
Yeah, so he's just a guy that really going into his rookie year. I don't know if he was the practice squad priority, but I was trying to look it up quick. I forget exactly what happened during his rookie season, but I know he did not see the field once. Now last year, going into camp, I think there was a lot of Richard Garage fans out there. I think a lot of people thought he had a chance. Then he makes the team, and he's considered one of the key depth pieces on this roster. Maybe the backup center. Who knows? Mitch Morris was so reliable, so we truly don't know who was playing that backup center. Maybe it was Ryan Bates. But you look at what Alec Anderson has really carved out in his career, and I think he does have the swing tackle spot kind of locked up at this point, which is astonishing to me because I really thought he was an inside versatility guy. So I thought he could play the guard and center spot, but they obviously trust him. And again, he's a guy that's been in the system. I think he's really worked his tail off to get to where he was at. And I think, again, he's a guy that they value at this point. I think he's really, probably a roster lock at this point, it's incredible to think, back to last year before the season that Alec Anderson going into 2024 is a roster lock. But yeah, I would go as far as to say that right now.
I would also point out too. I should have pointed out that during practice on Sunday when they went to a second team, or they had the first team out there, but they took Connor McGovern out from center for a handful of snaps, and Alec Anderson actually went in. So it seems like he might be aligned to be that second center as well. Like he's going to be, to your point, dude's making the roster. So as long as he can stay healthy. One other player too, 6th round pick, Daquan Hardy. I'm intrigued by him. I've read that he's had a couple nice plays at practice, and Sean McDermott basically said they drafted him because of his ability on special teams. Have you gotten any kind of sense so far through camp? And I'm sure we'll start to see more in the preseason here on Saturday, but who the hell is going to return kicks and punts, man? What are we doing here? I don't see anything about it.
Yeah, I am totally unsure. It's been KJ Hamler, Andy Isabella, and Daquan Hardy every single practice from my knowledge. So who knows what happens, but I will say Daquan Hardy real quick, blue and red scrimmage, great pass breakup on Andy Isabella in the slot area, was sticky in coverage. The second Isabella had the ball in his hands, perfect timing, knocked the ball out. And then later in practice had a crazy interception in the corner. So to follow that up. So I think with the punt returner competition, in my eyes, I don't know if it's going to be Daquan Hardy, but I think he does have the leg up due to the fact that when Taron Johnson was the vet rest, he got the first team reps at that nickel spot. Now they have rotated. Cam Lewis has also got some first team reps when Taron Johnson was out, but I just think that the defensive versatility that Hardy can bring, paired with maybe that punt return, kick return ability, why keep a KJ Hamler or Andy Isabella who first off, I think you can get back on the practice squad. So if you lose a Daquan Hardy, that, KJ Hamler or Andy Isabella, I think you could just call up if you really are in dire
Yeah.
straits, if you don't want to clue Shakir to be returning. So, yeah, I think right now, I don't know who's going to win the battle, but I would give the leg up to Hardy just because of the fact that his defensive ability, and I think he's just had a good overall camp.
You know what? You make a really good point too. Part of the 53-man roster decision making will ultimately come down to, well, if we get rid of this guy, can we get him back on the practice squad? Or if we cut this guy, he's got to go through waivers. Somebody's going to probably pick him up. One quick question. I'm going to let you go, AJ. Appreciate your time, man. Let's go back to Josh Allen. It has nothing to do with camp. I just want to get your thoughts on this. The NFL Top 100 has been ongoing over the last couple of weeks. It's completed now. Tyreek Hill was number 1. Lamar Jackson number 2. A lot of strong takes about that, including from yours truly. But anyway, Josh Allen, number 12. Of course, that was going to outrage a lot of Buffalo Bills fans, and it did. I don't know. I looked at that list. I'm like, well, most of these guys ahead of him, you can make a really good case for him. A couple, maybe not so much. But what were your thoughts on Josh Allen being ranked 12th among the NFL Top 100 for the year?
Yeah, I think he's a top 10 player in the NFL, first of all.
Sure.
But I want to say that it's crazier that Lamar Jackson's at 2 to me than Josh Allen being at 12. I think that was more surprising just because I think how can you rank Lamar? I get it, MVP and all that stuff, but I just don't. I'm just not. I think obviously Pat Mahomes is a better player, and I think a CMC is a more dynamic running back. But again, it's hard with Lamar because he's such a generational guy and does it so uniquely at that position. So I think Josh Allen, again, I think he's a little bit underrated, but the national talking points, and he has lost some games due to turnovers. So there are he has had his moments, but again, I think he's a top 10 player in this league. I don't read too much into that, but I will say that if I see Josh Allen not in the top 10. I'm gonna, have to have a comment on it because I think he is a top 10 player in this league, and he's Pat, he's a 4 straight 40+ touchdown player. No one's ever done it. He has the most touchdowns in the NFL since 2020. He's just a guy that his production and his involvement in the offense and what the Bills ask of him is just second to none in the NFL. And like Bruce Nolan says always, and I'll end it with this is, the reason Josh turns the ball over so much, although it is an issue, is because he has the most volume. Not many quarterbacks since 2018 have been out there at the volume Josh Allen has. So when you're out there, there's more volume, there's more room to make mistakes. And I think that's just a combination of the way Josh plays. And he's a turnover guy and he's a touchdown machine. And the good really outweighs the bad. So it's really, top 10 player for sure.
Yeah, I agree with you, man. 100%. Make sure you check out right here, right now, the podcast, AJ, as well as Alex Brasky, really crushing it there on the content creating side. And then, of course, Batavia Daily Sports, you guys are doing a really good job as well. I'm happy for you, man. That's why I want to end this. I want to say I'm really happy for you. You're young, you're hungry, you're doing a great job. You're picking the brains of the right people to pick the brains from. You're doing things the right way, and I'm excited about seeing your work unfold throughout this season and into the future, man. It was really, I'm really happy for you, and it's great to have you on the show.
I appreciate it, Pat. It's, Talking Buffalo is one of the staples that I've, has come across my timeline time and time again throughout the past few years when I've really wanted to get into this stuff. And, always appreciate you having me on and looking forward to maybe down the road doing it again. I love Sunny Reds, Pat. I do love Sunny Reds. Based off your podcast, because you talked about it so much. I went there. They're mediums, die for. They were high up on my scale, so I'm a big Sunny Reds fan as well.
All right, I appreciate you. I appreciate everybody out there. Thank you again for watching and listening to me back. Brand new episode. I will be at Bills camp on Monday. I'll have plenty of observations. Anthony Marino is going to be back with me tomorrow. Talk to you guys then.